What if I told you that a narrow strip of water, barely 33 kilometers wide, could trigger a global economic crisis or even a world war? Because right now, the Strait of Hormuz is on that brink. Missiles are flying, oil ports are burning, and the United States and Iran are once again staring each other down. This is not just another Middle Eastern flare up. This is a battle for control over the world's most critical oil artery, where a fragile ceasefire is collapsing, a new US military operation is underway, and thousands of ships are stuck in limbo. So, let's break down exactly what's happening. You see, over the past few days, tensions have exploded in the Gulf. United States says it destroyed 6 Iranian fast attack boats after drones and missiles targeted commercial vessels. But Iran denies that version entirely. Tehran instead claims it has hit US linked assets and accuses Washington of escalating the conflict deliberately. Meanwhile, the situation has spilled beyond the strait. Iran last night launched missile and drone strikes on the UAE, hitting an oil port and setting parts of it on fire. Civilian casualties, too, are being reported. And at least 5 people were killed in US strikes on cargo vessels, according to initial reports. And in the middle of all this chaos, thousands of commercial ships remain stranded, with crews waiting, watching, and hoping not to become the next target. But this entire crisis traces back to February 2026, where the broader conflict between the US Israel alliance and Iran escalated. And since then, the Gulf has turned into a high risk war zone. And now the United States has introduced a new move. It is being called Project Freedom. Announced by President Donald Trump, this initiative aims to escort stranded tankers and commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And while on the surface it sounds simple, protect global trade, reopen a critical route. But in reality, this is a high stakes military operation, with US Navy destroyers now escorting merchant vessels, warships actively patrolling the strait, and at the same time, the US's enforcement of a maritime blockade on Iran. Washington says 2 American merchant ships have already successfully crossed the strait under naval protection, while Iran disputes that claim. Iran, on its part, insists that the strait is not secure and warns that any foreign military presence could be treated as a hostile act. And that is where the real danger lies. Because this is not just about ships anymore, it is about control. But why does this narrow waterway matter so much? Well, because nearly one fifth of the world's oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Every day, millions of barrels of crude oil move through this single choke point. And if it gets blocked or even disrupted, the impact is immediate and global. Oil prices spike, shipping costs rise, and inflation spreads across economies. And that is already beginning to happen. Prices have surged sharply, and many shipping companies are now reluctant to send vessels through such a high risk zone. Some are rerouting, others are simply waiting. Which brings us to the ceasefire. Because on April 8th, a fragile ceasefire came into effect, brokered with diplomatic efforts involving regional players. For a moment, it seemed like tensions might cool, with talks being held in Islamabad between the United States and Iranian officials. But those talks ended without any agreement. Why? Well, because both sides are negotiating from completely different positions. The United States wants guaranteed freedom of navigation and security for global shipping, and Iran wants sanctions relief and recognition of its strategic influence in the region, with Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi having said clearly that there is no military solution to this crisis. He warned both the US and the UAE against deeper involvement. But at the same time, Iran continues to push back against what it calls an illegal maritime blockade. And that is the contradiction. Diplomacy is being talked about while military actions continue on the ground and at sea. But here, zoom out for a moment. This is no longer just a US Iran issue. The UAE is directly affected because the Strait of Hormuz is not just a regional route, it is a global lifeline. And the biggest risk right now is not just escalation, it is miscalculation. When missiles are launched, when drones are intercepted, when warships escort civilian vessels through contested waters, all it takes is one mistake, one misread signal, one wrong target, and this entire situation could spiral into a much larger war. So, where do things stand right now? The Strait of Hormuz is effectively a conflict zone. The ceasefire is barely holding on. The United States is trying to reopen global trade routes. Iran is pushing back, asserting control and warning against intervention. And the world is watching closely because what happens in this narrow stretch of water will not stay there. It will ripple across economies, across energy markets, and across geopolitics. So the question is no longer whether tensions will continue. The real question is how far does this go from here? What do you think? Is Project Freedom a necessary move to protect global trade or a dangerous escalation that could push the region closer to war? Let me know your thoughts. And if you want more clear, sharper breakdowns of the world's most important stories, subscribe to the narrative now and stay ahead of the narrative.